This podcast includes content created using artificial intelligence tools. All information is for general purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, legal, or regulatory advice. You should verify information independently and consult qualified professionals for personalized guidance. Welcome to the Luxembourg Fundcast. The Luxembourg Fundcast is created and produced by Bertrand Mariot, a practicing regulatory lawyer admitted to the Luxembourg and Paris bars. The mission of this podcast is to bring clear, free, and reliable information sourced from official references that are carefully curated and continually updated and refined through sophisticated and evolving prompt engineering on Luxembourg's financial regulation and investment funds to professionals and anyone interested in the Luxembourg Financial Center. Crucially, the analysis we are about to embark on is current and relevant as of August 15th, 2025. Today, we embark on a deep dive into what we might call the grand design of post-merger governance integration. Our focus is specifically on a Luxembourg Société Anonyme, or SA, navigating the complex landscape after acquiring, say, a significant U.S. entity. Now, this isn't just about the mechanics of merging balance sheets, nor is it merely about combining operational functions. No. This process is, in essence, part legal architecture, part intricate corporate diplomacy, and entirely fundamental to truly unlocking and realizing the long-term value promised by such a transaction. We will explore the nuanced journey required, from the essential redrafting of a company's foundational documents, its very constitutional DNA, you could say, to the strategic forging of a completely new, unified board. And all of this now operates under the watchful eye of recent, truly game-changing European legislation.
Indeed. What we're delving into today is, well, it's far more than an administrative exercise. It is a strategic imperative. The foundational goal is nothing less than creating a single, coherent, and truly unified corporate entity from two distinct predecessors. This meticulous and often demanding process is absolutely critical, as it ensures the newly enlarged enterprise can not only survive the initial shockwaves of combination, but truly thrive, operating seamlessly and decisively on the global stage. Over the course of this deep dive, we will be examining the intricacies of shareholder meetings, the strategic architecture of board and committee structures, and, perhaps most importantly, the profound shifts in the regulatory landscape that are fundamentally reshaping how these integrations are executed in Luxembourg. We'll uncover why the seemingly mundane aspects of governance can be the make-or-break factors in post-merger success.
So let's unpack this a bit. When we talk about post-merger governance integration, It is quite common for people to immediately think of, combining financial statements or perhaps merging operational departments, maybe even rationalizing IT systems. But our deep dive today reveals it goes so much deeper than that. It's fundamentally about aligning the very constitutional DNA of the company.
Right.
Its articles of association, the foundational rules that define its very existence and purpose, and its internal rules of engagement with the new strategic reality. Imagine, if you will, building a magnificent, complex new skyscraper, but attempting to use two different, perhaps even incompatible blueprints for the foundational structure. That kind of misalignment isn't just inconvenient, it can be catastrophic for the entire project. This raises a crucial question. Why is this foundational work so critically important, especially when a Luxembourg SA acquires a U.S. entity? Why can't we simply get the deal done, sign the papers, celebrate, and then move on to business as usual? Is it truly about value creation beyond the signed deal, or is there something more nuanced at play?
That's a profoundly important distinction to make. This is, without exaggeration, the foundational stage of value creation. A phase that is too often underestimated, I think, in the celebratory aftermath of a major acquisition. Establishing a robust, unified governance framework directly underpins and supports the combined entity's strategic objectives. You see, without it, that newly enlarged enterprise, as you so aptly put it, risks falling victim to a surprisingly common array of post-merger integration pitfalls. These pitfalls, more often than not, are rooted precisely in governance misalignment, conflicting decision-making processes that paralyze action, unclear lines of authority that breed internal friction, and differing corporate cultures that clash rather than coalesce, which happens a lot. Consider a scenario where the U.S. acquired entity traditionally operates with a very lean, rapid decision-making board, while the Luxembourg SA is perhaps accustomed to more protracted, consensus-driven deliberations. If these different operating rhythms aren't meticulously aligned at the governance level, single decisions can become drawn-out sagas, costing the company precious time and market opportunities.
Yeah, you lose momentum.
Exactly. A meticulously integrated governance structure ensures that the enterprise can operate seamlessly and decisively, enabling agility rather than being bogged down by internal friction and ambiguity. What's often overlooked is how the real tangible work of integration, the actual solidification of the strategic vision, truly begins after the initial celebratory headlines fade. It is this diligent, often unseen governance work that ensures the merger's long-term success and longevity. It's the invisible architecture, if you like, that holds everything together.
I find it fascinating how something so seemingly back office can have such a profound impact on the top line. It's truly about building a solid operating system.
Precisely.
That's robust enough for a transatlantic enterprise. Now, let's talk about the legal bedrock upon which all of this stands in Luxembourg. The core legislation we are dealing with here is the Law of 10 August 1915 on commercial companies, as amended, which, well, we'll just call it the 1915 law throughout our discussion. This venerable piece of legislation has served as the backbone of Luxembourg corporate life for well over a century. Its fundamental principle is quite elegant in its simplicity, yet profoundly impactful. It meticulously balances shareholder freedom with crucial security for third parties. But here's where its acute relevance comes into sharp focus. How does this long-standing, venerable piece of legislation, designed for a certain set of corporate realities, become acutely relevant and perhaps even challenging when we're integrating an entity from a jurisdiction like the United States? The U.S. corporate legal system often operates under a distinctly different legal and corporate philosophy, arguably more focused on shareholder primacy.
Yes, often.
Whereas the 1915 law, subtly but significantly, incorporates broader stakeholder considerations. How does our Luxembourg legal framework gracefully accommodate or perhaps even demand adaptation from a U.S. entity accustomed to a different emphasis?
That's an excellent point, and it leads us directly to the truly dynamic nature of the legal landscape. While the 1915 law indeed provides the foundational framework for Luxembourg SAS, a profound and recent change has been introduced that dramatically alters the playing field for all major cross-border transactions. We're speaking, of course, of the law of 17 February 2025, which has transposed the European Union's Directive 2019-21-21, commonly known as the Mobility Directive, into Luxembourg law.
Okay.
This new law became effective very recently, on the 2nd of March 2025. Now, it is important to clarify that a direct transatlantic acquisition, such as a Luxembourg SA acquiring a U.S. entity, doesn't fall directly within the explicit scope of an EU cross-border merger as defined by this directive.
Right, because the U.S. isn't in the EU.
Exactly.
Right.
However, the directive's influence extends far beyond its explicit scope. Think of it as a rising tide that lifts all boats, or perhaps more accurately, elevates the professional standards and scrutiny across the board for all significant corporate transactions in Luxembourg. The principles and heightened due diligence it introduces inevitably spill over into how other major cross-border transactions are viewed and processed. This is not a direct application, but a powerful indirect elevation of standards.
So, even if a U.S. acquisition isn't explicitly an EU cross-border merger, this new mobility directive still profoundly impacts it by setting a new benchmark.
Yes, very much so.
For due diligence and scrutiny. What, then, is the single most significant innovation or change that this new law introduces? What's the core of this heightened standard?
The most significant innovation of this new law, and arguably the most impactful for corporate governance professionals, is the introduction of a mandatory anti-abuse control to be performed by the Luxembourg notary.
Anti-abuse control.
Yes, this is a game changer. For transactions that fall within the directive's explicit scope, the notary, now acting in a far more elevated quasi-public official capacity, is legally required to verify that the operation is not being conducted for abusive, fraudulent, or criminal purposes.
Wow. That's a big shift.
It is. It fundamentally shifts the notary's role from what was primarily a procedural supervisor, someone ensuring all forms were correctly filled, and signatures witnessed, to a substantive gatekeeper. They now possess a direct legal obligation to scrutinize the underlying intent, the commercial rationale, and the bona fides of the transaction.
So they're looking behind the paperwork now.
Precisely. This is a profound shift in their responsibility and liability. This development has a consequential ripple effect on all major cross-border transactions, including those with non-EU entities, like a U.S. acquisition. Due to elevated professional standards, increased public scrutiny, and the imperative for notaries to mitigate their own legal liability, they are now applying this heightened standard of care more broadly across their practice. The era of treating complex corporate restructurings as a purely procedural box-ticking exercise is definitively over. Okay. For the corporate secretarial function, this has very practical and significant implications. The documentation supporting any major transaction must now constitute a comprehensive defense file for the notary.
A defense file. That sounds serious.
It is, in a sense. This isn't just a simple collection of documents. It's a meticulously compiled, robust dossier that must proactively and persuasively justify the commercial rationale and legal soundness of the operation. You need to anticipate and effectively neutralize any potential red flags or questions that might arise during the notary's anti-abuse control. This effectively elevates the corporate governance function from merely being a technical executor of administrative tasks to a strategic guardian of the transaction's integrity and long-term viability.
Right.
This raises an important question for us. How does this heightened scrutiny fundamentally alter the due diligence and documentation required for effective post-merger integration? What practical steps must corporate secretaries take to meet this new standard?
That requirement for a defense file sounds like it completely changes the game. It emphasizes that this isn't just about the what of the legal shifts, but the how of executing them with unprecedented rigor. So, beyond this heightened scrutiny, what are the concrete actions on the ground? Where do you even begin to physically build this new entity, especially when it comes to formal documentation? This brings us to what I think of as the architect's toolkit, the specific documentation and corporate actions that are the physical manifestation of this integration. The cornerstone of post-merger governance integration, the very first step in amending that constitutional DNA you mentioned, is the amendment of the company's Articles of Association through an extraordinary general meeting, or EGM. This is the company's constitution, as you rightly put it. So, what exactly is the rigorous step-by-step process mandated by Article 453 of the 1915 law to achieve this profound change?
The process is indeed rigorous, and it demands absolute precision at every turn. It's a sequence of carefully orchestrated steps, each with its own specific legal requirements. The journey begins, perhaps surprisingly for some who might think the EGM is the very first step right in the boardroom.
Okay.
The Extraordinary General Meeting, EGM. Clause-by-clause guide. First, there's the board resolution to convene. Before any shareholder is even notified, the company's board of directors must pass a formal resolution to convene the EGM. This resolution is absolutely critical, as it's not just about deciding to hold a meeting, it must meticulously approve the precise agenda for the shareholder meeting and, most importantly, the exact final text of the proposed amendments to the Articles of Association.
So the board has to agree on every single word first.
Yes, precisely. This means the board must be fully aligned on every specific word and clause before the shareholders even see them. It's a foundational step that locks in the proposed changes and signals the board's collective endorsement. Any deviation from this pre-approved text at the EGM would render the resolution vulnerable to challenge. Next is the convening notice and agenda. Once the board has approved the resolution, the formal convening notice for the EGM is issued. For a publicly listed SA, Article 458 of the 1915 law mandates a strict timeline for transparency. Publication must occur at least 15 days before the scheduled meeting.
15 days? That's not a lot of time.
It isn't, which underlines the need for planning. This notice isn't just a simple announcement. It must be published in the Recueil électronique, the Société et Associations, or Luxembourg's electronic register for companies and associations, and also in a prominent Luxembourg newspaper. The agenda itself must be meticulously detailed, leaving no room for ambiguity. This is not a place for vague bullet points or general discussions. Any resolution passed on a matter not explicitly listed in that agenda is vulnerable to being declared void.
So total clarity for shareholders.
Exactly. This ensures complete transparency, providing shareholders proper and timely notice of precisely what they'll be voting on, protecting their interests and the integrity of the process. Then we encounter the quorum and majority requirements, which set a famously high bar for such significant corporate changes. Article 453 of the 1915 law dictates that an EGM can only validly deliberate if a quorum of at least 50% of the company's entire share capital is present or represented.
50%. Wow.
And to pass, a resolution requires an even higher hurdle, a supermajority of at least 2/3 of the votes cast.
2/3. Okay, that's tough for a public company.
It can be. For a widely held public company, achieving this 50% capital quorum on the first attempt can be a significant logistical challenge. The sheer dispersion of shareholders, coupled with varying levels of engagement, it can make it genuinely difficult. This often necessitates convening a second EGM, which, fortunately, can then deliberate regardless of the capital represented, provided the proper and equally strict procedures for the second convening are followed.
Ah, okay, so there's a fallback mechanism.
Yes. This flexibility, while adding time, helps ensure that important and necessary changes can eventually be made, even if initial shareholder attendance is low. It reflects a practical understanding. Finally, we arrive at the notarial deed and filing. The EGM must be held before a Luxembourg notary. This isn't optional. It's a fundamental procedural safeguard. The notary officiates the meeting, meticulously ensuring that all legal formalities are observed, and then records the entire proceedings, including all adopted resolutions, in an authentic notarial deed.
The official record.
The definitive legal proof of the amendments, yes. A binding, unimpeachable document. Once executed, the notary then promptly files this deed with the Luxembourg Trading Companies Register, the RCS. Its subsequent publication in the RESA is the final step that renders the changes legally effective and opposable to third parties.
Making it official to the world.
Correct. From the moment of publication, these amendments are binding on the company and legally recognized by anyone interacting with it. It's the public seal of legitimacy on the new corporate structure.
That's an incredibly thorough breakdown of the EGM process. It truly highlights the precision and meticulousness required at every stage. It sounds like navigating this process without expert legal guidance would be, well, risky.
Highly advisable, yes.
But amending the Articles of Association is just one crucial piece of this puzzle. The other critical component of this post-merger governance integration, one that breathes life into the new constitutional framework, is shaping the leadership itself, the board and its committees. Once these constitutional changes are meticulously made, how do we then go about forging a new board that effectively represents the combined entity, and what happens with the composition and the mandates of these crucial committees?
Indeed, reshaping the leadership is absolutely paramount to governing the new, larger enterprise effectively, particularly one that now spans continents and diverse corporate cultures. The legal mechanics for appointing directors are, on the surface, relatively straightforward. They are appointed by a resolution of the General Meeting of Shareholders. As you noted, this is very often handled at the very same EGM that amends the Articles of Association, purely for efficiency and to immediately staff the newly structured entity.
Makes sense. Do it all at once.
Right. The necessary documentation here includes the shareholder resolution itself, formal letters of acceptance from the newly appointed directors confirming their willingness to serve, and the subsequent filing with the RCS to update the public record. Standard procedure, but vital. Now, crucially, Article 441-6 of the 1915 law specifically empowers the Board of Directors to establish special committees and to define their powers and responsibilities. This is the precise legal foundation for creating new committees, or, more relevantly and significantly in a post-merger scenario, for meticulously overhauling the charters of key committees, such as the Audit and Risk Committee and the Nomination Committee.
The workhorses of the board, you called them?
Exactly. These committees often do the detailed heavy lifting. Here's where the nuance truly comes into play. Redrafting these committee charters is an essential, highly substantive task. This is emphatically not merely an administrative exercise of copying and pasting. The existing charters were painstakingly tailored to the pre-merger entity, reflecting its specific scope, risk profile, strategic priorities. They are simply no longer fit for purpose for a more complex, transatlantic organization.
Your old clothes don't fit the new body.
An apt analogy. Trying to fit the new, enlarged entity into old committee charters is like trying to run a sophisticated global corporation with the governance manual of a small local business. It just won't work effectively. Let's consider specific examples of key clauses within these charters that require precise and thoughtful amendment. Firstly, the Purpose Clause. This clause must be significantly expanded to reflect the new, broadened operational and geographic scope. For instance, an Audit and Risk Committee's purpose, which previously might have focused solely on Luxembourg GAAP and EU regulatory risks, must now comprehensively encompass oversight of financial statements, possibly including entities under U.S. GAAP.
Right, different accounting standards.
And address a far wider spectrum of risks pertinent to the U.S. regulatory environment, from Sarbanes-Oxley to different data privacy rules. It's a broader mandate for a broader company. Secondly, the Composition Clause. This must be updated to align not just with the new board's size, but also its strategic composition. It might now explicitly mandate directors possessing specific expertise.
Like U.S. market knowledge.
Exactly. Or intimate familiarity with the acquired company's industry sector, or even expertise in cross-border regulatory compliance. This ensures the board and its committees have the necessary diverse skill sets. And thirdly, the Responsibilities Clause, which is undeniably the heart of the charter. For a nomination committee, for example, its responsibilities must now expand to include defining rigorous criteria for selecting directors for the integrated board.
Balancing old and new directors.
Precisely. Ensuring a strategic balance between legacy directors from both entities, thoughtfully integrating new independent voices, and considering diversity in skills, experience, background. Critical for a unified, effective board. This redrafting process, however, offers a truly remarkable opportunity that transcends mere legal compliance. The often intense discussions and debates around the specific wording of these charters can, in fact, serve as a powerful, structured forum for deep cultural integration. When directors from the legacy Luxembourg and U.S. entities debate the precise responsibilities of the audit committee, say, how aggressively should they pursue audit findings, or what's the acceptable risk level for a new venture?
Those could be sticky points.
They can be. Or when they debate the exact procedures for board meetings, they are, in effect, negotiating their shared understanding of corporate governance itself. This process forces an explicit conversation about potentially differing expectations regarding risk appetite, board oversight, communication protocols, issues often at the root of post-merger friction.
The soft stuff that can actually derail things.
Surprisingly often, yes. Even more so than financial disagreements sometimes. The company secretary can and should strategically facilitate this, transforming a dry documentation exercise into a foundational act of building consensus. The resulting charters become more than just legal documents. They become the codified operating manual, the playbook, for the new unified board, reflecting a truly integrated philosophy.
That's a profound insight. It's a reminder that it's not just about getting the words on paper, but about leveraging the process of drafting to actually integrate cultures and forge a new shared identity. You've laid out the what and how of the documentation and legal mechanics, but putting all of this into practice, turning theory into operational reality, requires incredibly careful orchestration, both internally and externally. It sounds like there's a significant diplomatic dimension involved beyond just the legal requirements. And of course, a well-structured timeline is absolutely essential. How do we navigate these complexities in the execution phase? What's the art behind it?
You've hit on the core challenge. Executing a governance integration isn't merely a technical task. It is as much an art of diplomacy and negotiation as it is a science of law. It fundamentally requires securing deep alignment among a wide array of key stakeholders, the chief legal officer, the CEO, the board chair, and crucially, directors from both the acquiring and acquired companies. Each brings their own perspectives.
And potentially their own agendas.
Potentially, yes. All of which must be deftly managed. A. The diplomatic dimension, the art of internal negotiation. A primary and often underestimated task here is bridging what we can call the governance gap. This is the inherent, often subtle difference between the U.S. model, frequently shareholder-centric, very focused on SEC regulations, quarterly performance, and the Luxembourg model, which often incorporates a broader stakeholder perspective, employees, creditors, the public interest, maybe nuances from state shareholding. Reconciling these different philosophical approaches requires not just legal acumen, but profoundly sensitive negotiation.
Can you give an example of where that clash might happen?
Sure. Consider risk appetite and compliance reporting lines. The U.S. side might favor a highly centralized structure, reporting to corporate HQ. The Luxembourg entity might prefer a more localized approach due to different national laws or accountability norms. Navigating this isn't just about the law, it's understanding the cultural underpinnings. How do you bridge that divide without alienating anyone? It's about finding the optimal, legally sound path forward. Furthermore, the presence of strong personalities within senior leadership can add another layer of complexity.
Always a factor.
Indeed. This means the negotiation strategy must be underpinned by meticulous preparation, knowing your arguments inside out, extensive pre-meetings to build consensus before formal discussions, and clear, data-driven justifications for every proposed change. You can't just present a new structure, you must explain its rationale compellingly.
Selling the change, essentially.
In many ways, yes. In this intricate dance, the corporate governance professional's role transforms into that of a trusted advisor, a quiet but firm guardian. Their challenge to proposals isn't obstruction. It's a vital safeguard, ensuring legal robustness, mitigating risks, protecting the board from procedural missteps. They're the guardians of process and integrity. B, a practical timeline, sequencing the corporate actions. Now, concerning the practical execution, a well-structured and rigorously adhered to timeline is absolutely essential. It keeps momentum, manages expectations, ensures compliance. While every integration is unique, a typical sequence for these post-merger governance actions might unfold over approximately 5 months.
5 months. Okay, let's walk through that.
All right. In month 1, the crucial first post-closing board of directors meeting is convened. This is the kickoff. Objectives. Approve the overall integration plan. Establish a dedicated integration steering committee. Formally task legal and corporate secretarial functions with preparing documentation. Sets the direction.
Getting the ball rolling.
Exactly. By month 2, drafts of the amended articles and revised committee charters are circulated to the board for a first round of review and comment. Initial feedback, adjustments. Simultaneously, logistical planning for the EGM commences securing the notary, drafting initial convening notices.
And laying the groundwork.
Yes. In month 3, the board meets again. This is pivotal. They approve the final drafts of all documents, articles, charters. Then the board formally resolves to convene the EGM. Following this, the official convening notice is filed with the RCS for publication in RISA. That starts the clock on the 15-day notice period.
Making it official.
Month 4 is EGM month, held before a Luxembourg notary. The notary executes the notarial deed, memorializing the approved resolutions, amendments, director appointments, the binding legal record. Shortly after, the notary files this deed with the RCS, making the changes public and legally effective.
Done deal, legally speaking.
Legally, yes. But then come critical post-EGM actions. The first meeting of the newly constituted board is convened. Here, the new committee charters are formally adopted and members appointed to those committees. Theory becomes operational reality.
Putting people in the new seats.
Precisely. Finally, in month 5, all internal governance documents, like the board handbook, are updated to reflect the new structure, policies, mandates. Concurrently, final filings with the RCS and the Register of Beneficial Owners, or RBE, are completed to ensure all public records are accurate and up to date. Full compliance. Adhering to this is key. C, the price of precision. Deconstructing the costs.
That timeline is incredibly helpful for visualizing the process. A complex choreography, really. But of course, precision, rigor, expert guidance, it all costs something. So let's deconstruct the costs. What are the primary cost categories involved in a successful post-merger governance integration? What should a company budget for?
The successful integration indeed requires a clear-eyed budget. Understanding the cost structure is vital for planning. Several primary categories. Firstly, notary fees. In Luxembourg, these aren't negotiable. They're regulated by a Grand Ducal tariff, a fixed schedule set by law. For acts like amending articles, the fee is calculated on a sliding scale based on the company's share capital. So for a large, publicly listed company, it can be significant, albeit predictable. Statutory cost.
Unavoidable.
Unavoidable. Secondly, legal advisory fees. External legal counsel is indispensable here. Their expertise is critical for navigating the 1915 law, the mobility directive implications, bespoke drafting. Fees are typically either a fixed amount for the whole EGM process or hourly for more intricate drafting or negotiation support. Unlike notary fees, these aren't set by scale. They reflect complexity, scope, expertise needed.
Variable, depending on the job.
Correct. Thirdly, RCS and administrative fees. Standard fees charged by the Luxembourg business registers for filing deeds. Updating director info with the RCS. Smaller, generally, but mandatory for maintaining public records. And here's where it truly becomes imperative to pay close attention, particularly regarding those administrative fees. There's been a critical recent regulatory change.
Oh, what's that?
Effective from the 24th of March, 2025, a new, far more punitive schedule of late filing fees has been introduced for RCS and RBE filings.
More punitive how?
This isn't minor. Delays can now cause fees to escalate dramatically. What might have been, say, a €50 baseline fee could, with significant delay, skyrocket to €500 or even more.
Wow, a tenfold increase or more.
Depending on the delay, yes. This introduces a sharp, rather unforgiving financial incentive to adhere strictly to that timeline we discussed. It underscores the critical importance of precision, not just for legal validity, but now quite directly for cost management. The cost of procrastination just went up significantly.
That's a powerful incentive to stay on track. The cost of delay can now be quite tangible, beyond just operational friction. So after meticulously navigating all these legal nuances, diplomatic challenges, precise timelines, what's the tangible payoff? What strategic dividend does this incredibly painstaking work actually yield? Is it truly worth the investment?
The meticulous, often arduous, yet ultimately essential work yields a strategic dividend that extends far beyond mere legal compliance or avoiding penalties. This is where the investment truly pays off.
Okay.
It transforms a necessary process into a formidable competitive advantage. Firstly, a flawlessly executed integration signals stability and control, not just internally, but critically to the market, investors, regulators. It's a powerful demonstration that the new management team is in full command, possesses a clear strategic vision, and is committed to the highest governance standards.
Building confidence when things are uncertain.
Exactly. It builds immense confidence when uncertainty is often highest. It reassures stakeholders, shareholders, employees, analysts that the merger is progressing smoothly, professionally. This can lead to better investor sentiment, reduced regulatory scrutiny, stronger valuation. Secondly, and perhaps most critically, this entire process builds the essential foundation for true synergy. A clear, well-documented, universally understood governance framework clarifies decision-making authority, streamlines communication, significantly reduces the internal friction that can plague post-merger environments.
Gets everyone pulling in the same direction faster.
Precisely. Think of it as the solid, expertly engineered chassis upon which all other integration efforts, operational, financial, cultural, can be successfully built without collapsing. This clarity and reduced friction directly accelerate the realization of the merger's promised value. It ensures acquired capabilities, technologies, market positions can be leveraged effectively and swiftly.
Instead of getting bogged down.
Instead of being mired in internal bureaucracy, yes. It's the difference between two ships colliding and two ships smoothly docking and becoming one. Ultimately, in the context of a complex cross-border merger, the most potent, unique selling point isn't just the combination of assets or market share. It is, profoundly, the creation of a unified, efficient, and transparent governance machine. This robust framework becomes a durable competitive advantage. It helps attract and retain high-caliber talent. People want to work for stable, well-managed organizations. It attracts sophisticated investment.
Because it shows the entity is well-run.
Exactly. By proving the new entity isn't just a larger version of its predecessors, but a truly integrated, strategically aligned global leader. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's undeniably clear. Sophisticated governance isn't just about compliance. It's a powerful, proactive, competitive differentiator in today's global market. It turns a potential weakness into enduring strength. Key takeaways recap.
That's a fantastic way to frame it, governance as a powerful competitive differentiator, a strategic advantage. As we conclude, let us revisit the 3 essential takeaways from our deep dive today. What are the core points people should remember?
Okay, 3 key things. First, the extraordinary general meeting is the legal crucible for forging the new company's constitutional identity. Its strict procedural requirements under the 1915 law convening notices, notarial deeds demand absolute precision, no room for error.
Precision is paramount. Got it. What's second?
Second, the painstaking redrafting of boarding committee charters is not just a legal necessity, but a profound strategic opportunity. It's the primary forum for aligning disparate governance cultures, debating perspectives, building unified operational consensus for the new leadership, turning friction into shared vision.
Right, the cultural integration aspect.
Yeah.
And third,
those new mandatory anti-abuse controls from the EU Mobility Directive have fundamentally raised the bar for all major cross-border transactions in Luxembourg, even with non-EU entities. Corporate governance professionals must now prepare every step with a new level of substantive justification, ready for heightened notarial scrutiny. It's about proving integrity, not just procedure.
a truly insightful deep dive. It highlights with striking clarity how this intricate legal and governance work forms the indispensable bedrock of successful cross-border integrations. It's really not just about compliance, it's about building resilience and future success.
And maybe a final thought for our listeners. Consider how this evolving, expanded role of the Luxembourg notary, with their new substantive anti-abuse control, how might that influence the structure and transparency requirements for all future complex cross-border transactions, even those far beyond the explicit scope of the EU? What broader implications could this have for global corporate governance standards and the very flow of international capital as jurisdictions adapt to these heightened expectations? Something to ponder. #tag outro.
This podcast is a collaborative and free resource that improves over time. Your comments or requests for new topics or themes are highly welcome, especially on our YouTube channel, Rigore Media. We want to be a valuable resource for everyone working in the Luxembourg financial sector and beyond at all levels. If you'd like to support our work, the best way is by subscribing on major podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts, where a 5-star rating would really help us grow. You can also like and subscribe to our Rigore Media YouTube channel. All relevant links are in the show notes. For our French-speaking listeners, you can also find our sister podcast in French. It was the Luxembourg Fundcast for you today. This podcast includes content created using artificial intelligence tools. All information is for general purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, legal, or regulatory advice. You should verify information independently and consult qualified professionals for personalized guidance.